take it away. My name is Amy Hilado. I'm a senior program advisor at RefugeeONE. I had actually been at RefugeeONE for 11 years as the founding clinical director of a mental health program that I started there in 2011 and just recently stepped down, but remain connected to the organization. So I'm happy to be here. Today's session is really about thinking about the role of refugee resettlement agencies in supporting refugee newcomers. RefugeeONE is one of the largest refugee resettlement agencies here in Chicago, Illinois, and we are connected with the U.S. Department of State. And so I'll speak more to who we are and who we serve. I oftentimes will start with this slide. These are the images of the people we work with. Refugees that are languishing in refugee camps across the globe who've been waiting on average 17 years. Most people think refugees have a fast track to the countries that they are ultimately resettled in, but that's simply not true. The vetting process is quite long. These are the images of people that are waiting at closed borders who are hoping to file for asylum. They are children that are traveling alone. They are families that are crossing dangerous bodies of water. They are walking incredibly long distances with no guarantee of survival, but they do so with the hope of rebuilding their lives with safety and dignity. I'm a mental health provider here at RefugeeONE. That's my area of work, and I will tell you that as I hear their stories are often threaded with incredible resilience, testimony of their strength in the face of uncertainty, but at the same time, there's a lot of pain in their stories. Them witnessing, them directly experiencing intense violence, loss, death. Again, they take very long journeys with no guarantee of survival, and yet when they arrive in their resettlement countries, there's a hope that is oftentimes threaded in their stories, hope that sustains them in the midst of all the uncertainty that they encounter along the way. And so if you're working with refugee communities, let me say broadly, forcibly displaced populations, as a resettlement program, we focus on the entire arc of their journey because that's going to tell us how well these communities are going to adjust to life in a new country and any emergent health issues, mental health issues, and health issues that are going to show up. And so I break up the journey into 3 different pieces. Pre-migration experiences, those experiences in leaving their country of origin, the experiences in transit, for some that could be a week, for others it's decades. And then I think a lot about their post-migration, their resettlement experiences. When they finally get to that destination, is that destination experienced as welcoming? Because what we know in practice, what we know in research is that when a resettlement country, a receiving country is seen as hostile, and we know the rhetoric has become harsher against refugees and immigrants, that it actually makes adjustment that much harder. Oftentimes we think about what makes an experience traumatic or feel traumatic. And so it is a direct threat, an experience that is a direct threat to your physical, psychological well-being. It's often perceived as overwhelming, that you've lost control over a situation, there's intense fear, and a result of that, feeling overwhelmed, feeling that you have no sense of control, it leaves one feeling helpless. The duration of it, the intensity of the trauma, all of that factors in to how a person is going to ultimately react and behave. So we know that the long-standing traumas, the complex traumas that people experience, children experience, that it will actually change how they see themselves, how they see their community, how they see opportunities around them. And we know there are common denominators when it comes to immigration trauma, that the arrivals I've worked with over the last decade, many of them talk about this history of fear, this uncertainty, this worry about the future, this need for safety. Even if they're grateful to be in their country, resettlement country, oftentimes they talk about how much they miss their country that they left behind, the culture, the people. That makes it worse when it comes to homesickness, feelings of isolation and loneliness. And because we're so connected with global technology, WhatsApp, Facebook, the news, they are seeing what's happening in their home country in real time. I think about the new arrivals in the United States, the 70,000 Afghans that were emergency evacuated out of Kabul last August because of the US military withdrawal, because the Taliban took over. They are hearing what's happening in Afghanistan. And now RefugeeONE is responding to the crisis in Ukraine, the fastest growing humanitarian crisis, 5 million displaced. Already we have Ukrainians that are entering through the southern border, and we are preparing as an agency to welcome more. And so knowing that these are long conflicts that have spanned months, years, and decades, know that all of that has a cumulative impact on how people adjust to life in a new country. And so this is where RefugeeONE steps in. We have been resettling refugees and immigrants, humanitarian immigrants from across the globe since 1982. In 2011, I started the mental health program, so creating one of the very few national models for a refugee mental health care model nested in a resettlement program, with the idea that we were going to center trauma, we were going to center mental health. Because a resettlement program is around simply to help people adjust to life in a new country. We have core services to do that, but we recognized very early on that if we did not pay attention to mental health needs and physical health needs, we weren't going to be able to provide services as holistically and as competently as we could. There are resettlement programs like RefugeeONE that are affiliated with the Department of State here in the United States, in every state, mostly every state. Core resettlement services are what you see on the left. So ORR stands for Office of Refugee Resettlement. You're always going to see case management. That's a person that's going to help apply for public benefits. There's always an employment team to help new arrivals find jobs, English language training programs, which will also help in finding jobs and just navigating a new environment. And most programs will have a youth program to focus on getting kids enrolled in school, after school programming, tutoring, so that kids also can get their footing underneath them. What makes RefugeeONE special is that we have additional services that are tailored to our understanding of what are the unique needs of the arrivals we are seeing in Chicago. So mental health wellness program is there to address the complex mental health needs from prenatal to older adulthood. We know dental care access it goes hand in hand when we think about physical health. We know it's hard to navigate in a trauma-informed, culturally sensitive way. And so we have a dental clinic, a 3-chair dental clinic to provide free services. Majority of our arrivals are women and children, roughly 70% of them. And so we have vocational training that is really geared towards women and empowering women who sometimes have to play dual roles of being in the home, caring for children. And the sewing studio is a great example of that. We have classes that train our arrivals on basic sewing skills, how to take on projects. And when they graduate from the program, they get a free sewing machine. And RefugeeONE will take projects from other companies. During the pandemic, making masks, making grocery bags, making clothing. And so it's a way of them making income for their family while staying at home, which is wonderful. The last administration really crippled the U.S. refugee program. It really shuttered arrivals through that specific pathway to the United States. And so we expanded our services to include those to asylum seekers who are here, who do not have status, but really can't return back to their home countries. Our asylum program includes attorneys. We're really focusing on the Afghan arrivals who are here, that unless Congress takes action, we have 60,000 Afghan parolees who don't have a pathway to citizenship. And so know that that's an issue that is nationwide. Immigration services include supports to help people file for green cards, adjust their status to U.S. citizenship. Also services to help people petition family that are back home to get them here to the United States. So a breadth of services that really speak to family reunification, which is, again, core to feeling like you can rebuild your lives here in a new country. We know that as an agency, we're a big agency with 60 plus staff members, 42 languages represented to reflect the diversity of the populations we serve, but we know that our time is limited and we have so many arrivals we are serving. So mentorship programs, co-sponsor programs, volunteers that will jump in and take our new arrivals to different places in the city to provide English language training, school tutoring for the youth, ways of helping people feel that sense of belonging and welcome, which is also, again, critical to adjustment and mental well-being. Oops, I missed a slide. So GlobalWE, we are about engaging you in populations that we serve across the globe and opportunities to volunteer in programs like ours and programs similar to ours across the globe. And so when it comes to volunteership and engagement, what I will say that all new arrivals who are forcibly displaced They deserve a community that welcomes them. And so this is a call for you to educate your friends, your family, your colleagues about who these new arrivals are and how we can collectively create a welcoming community for them. To be a good neighbor, to reach out, to support organizations that are doing this work, because that is part of strengthening communities. We also want you to donate your time, your talents, your resources to local resettlement agencies in your state and in your city. That if you can, if you have a trade, be sure that there probably are arrivals who would love to learn that trade. We also say that if you own a company, hire a refugee, hire a new arrival. Or if you know of companies that are looking for energetic, hardworking folks that are really excited to contribute to life in a new country, that by all means recommend the agency so that they can get connected. We know that the direct practice work that we do at the front line is critically important. We also know that advocacy is important. So we always encourage folks to talk to their local and state leaders, to think about policies for refugees and immigrants that are equitable for all. We know that not all communities are treated the same, and we're seeing that. The intersection of immigrant status and race and religion and gender, that it's there, and people are not having the same experiences. The main thrust for us right now is get Congress to pass, our US Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act. We emergency evacuated 70,000 people. Some of them, many of them, do not have a pathway to citizenship. And that fear, that worry that they're going to be deported back to Afghanistan is real. And so we need Congress to act here in the United States to make sure that they do have a pathway to citizenship and that it's going to be seamless for them. If you want to learn more about what refugee resettlement programs, what RefugeeONE is doing in the community, this is our website, refugeeone.org. Join our mailing list so you can hear about what we do here in Chicago and learn more about our network of resettlement programs across the country.